My guest today is Bill Mayberry. He's going to talk about the transition from full-time work into a kind of a portfolio of activities and how that affected him and how he approached that. It's a really, it's a really important topic, particularly in 11 Canterbury. We have a lot of people who have faced this kind of a challenge, or I think, as Bill would say, face this opportunity, and some might say an insurmountable opportunity. So I'm looking forward to talking about this, Bill. So you left after a long, long career at a very large company, AT&T. I mean, are there things that you wish you had known before you embarked on this journey?
Short answer is yes. And what I did once I left AT&T is I initially went to a smaller company, been about 2 years there. And then after that, I went to another large company, spent about 2 years there. And honestly, what I learned is you just trade one set of problems for another. And that um, things that I was responsible for at AT&T, for example, big budgets, bill plans, network quality, you name it. Even when I went to a smaller company thinking that it'd be more of a downshift, but there you worried about cash flow and RFP responses and being able to just, keep the business going. And then I went to another large company, which was a vendor of AT&T, and saw that side of the equation. So what I wish I would have done, and this is the one thing that I would recommend to anybody in that situation, is hit the pause button. Hit the pause button and really take stock of what you've done in your career to that point, but more importantly, what you'd like to do next. Maybe some things that you wish you had time to do, maybe spend more time with family, maybe some hobbies, things like that. And even talk to some other people that have been on that path to really kind of shape what your next phase of your life and potentially career is going to be. And spend some time on priorities, spend some time on honestly understanding, what are your priorities? What are things you really want to, focus on? And that's what I wish I would have done differently to answer your question. I wish I would have hit that pause button before I walked out the door at AT&T and really put some critical thinking into this. I think I would have got where I ultimately ended up a lot quicker if I had done that.
I'd have been if you had done that. Yeah, I mean, it sort of did you decide to retire from AT&T, or was there a bit of a push?
There wasn't a push as much as just a realization that we were always doing mergers and always doing acquisitions and reorganizations. And generally speaking, living in Atlanta, Georgia, I would come out pretty good on that because we were the headquarters of Bell South and Singular Wireless. Until about 2 years before I left, I ended up on the other side of one of those where SBC bought Bell South and suddenly everything was shifting over to Dallas, Texas. And I realized that if I wanted to continue the kind of career that I would like to have there, I would have to move, and that just wasn't feasible from a family standpoint. Fortunately, I was eligible for early retirement. At the time, if you had a combination of age and service of 75 years, which I did by that point, you could take full retirement, take your benefits. In my case, took my 401k, rolled it over to an IRA. So it was really a just time for me to go. And I'll add one more point. When the momentum shifted over to Dallas, so many people that I'd come up through the business with on the Bell South side were leaving. And it just felt like, okay, it's time. And so that was really it. I wasn't really pushed, but it was time.
It's interesting for me. I at least share some of the things. I worked at Digital, Compaq, and HP through lots of mergers. It's always a bit of a mess. In one of the things they made me an offer that was actually impossible to refuse, but it ended up with me leaving a little bit earlier than I had planned. And I did exactly the same wrong thing you did. I didn't pause.
Right.
I just said, I want something that's completely different because I'm tired of dealing with giant bureaucracies that are half a world away. So I will find a small company. When you discover a giant bureaucracy of people telling you how to do something they don't know how to do, is one problem, right? Worrying whether you're going to make payroll on Friday is a different.
Absolutely, Dan. I used to I tell people this. You haven't lived until you sat in a conference room on Wednesday trying to figure out how you can make payroll Friday.
It's kind of a thing. But it seems to me like the kind of theme of what you've said is look at this. For some people, their sense of who they are is tied to their job title. Their social circle may revolve around their job title. Their senses of accomplishment and how their day lays out,
Right.
it depends on the job. And it can be kind of a wrenching experience when you leave. But it seems like what you've said is look at it as an opportunity. Uh,
Absolutely. In fact, what I would tell people is look, for the first time, probably in a very long time, you now have control to define what you're going to do next. Because at least in my career with a large company, you were moving fast. They were moving to different cities, different jobs. And yeah, I think if you look at this as an opportunity, then you really can shape ways that you would be still productive, perhaps, if you want to work part time, but also incorporate the things you might have missed along the way. So that's what I would encourage people.
of course, one of the challenges that might come up, you can get a little bit complacent when your day is planned by AT&T or, in my case, Hewlett Packard. And then you find yourself at home. I found that my spouse was running the place really well without my management assistance. But you're at home. I think you need to structure your day of what you're going to do, or else you can find um, things going awry.
Absolutely. What I would recommend to people and what I ultimately did was, I do have a plan for each day. Now it's not, I don't wake up in the morning and have a list of 8 meetings I have to attend anymore, but I have things that I have planned for the day and it's got flexibility. If I decide I just as soon sit in the sunroom and look at the lake for an hour, I can do that. But I'm also conscious of the fact that you need to have things ordered, particularly if you've always worked that way. The initial phase of moving into that can be a little concerning. You do find yourself, um, well, like in my case, ultimately decided to start doing consulting. When I was doing that on my own, many days the phone didn't ring and I had a lot of time on my hands. So what I encourage people to do is plan for that and have hobbies or activities or whatnot to fill in for those things. And it takes a while to adjust, but after you start adjusting, I think you'll like it a lot better. And that would be the message I would give people.
It's interesting. I think of something. I remember I was talking to my mother, right after my dad retired. We were talking about basically stages of life, and I said you really seem really happy, and her comment was, "Life, Dan, always changes." She said, "But it can always get better. It's always better. We're enjoying what we're doing." All right, my dad took up ballroom dancing after 48 years at Delta Airlines, which kind of surprised me. I also learned that he 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 won my mother's heart by reciting right before World War II the U.S. states in alphabetical order and their capitals.
That's impressive.
But are you happy now with the way things are going for you, Bill?
Yes. And we spend a lot of times with our grandchildren. In fact, that was one of those things that I wanted to talk just a little bit about. Our first grandchild was born back in 2016, and that kind of led us to thinking we want to be involved with our grandchildren. And that led us to a decision that we executed about 2 years ago to actually move out of Atlanta down to Columbus, Georgia, where our one daughter is with three of the grandchildren. They live 10 miles away. We're actively involved in taking them to their activities and things like that. But we also live only an hour and a half from the Atlanta airport, where we can fly up to Pittsburgh. And that's where my other daughter is. That's her husband's hometown. And they have two daughters. And in fact, we're helping them to build an addition on their house so we can have our own space when we go up to visit. So we made a serious kind of commitment to be more involved, and that makes us very happy.
Yeah, it sounds like the overarching message is it's an opportunity, take advantage of it and figure out what's really important to making you happy.
And
And
that's key. You just nailed it down because some people, like your dad, want to do ballroom dancing. Well, God, I've got two left feet. I would be clumsy if I tried to do that. Or maybe golf. Well, my golf game is beyond help. So it's not that. Or, running marathons. Well, I'm not built like a marathon runner. And so, I describe this as, with our grandkids, and that may just totally be the opposite of what somebody. But I think the key is to do some thinking and end up in those areas that are your priorities. And I think if you do that, you can really maximize and enjoy this phase of life.
I think knowing what you enjoy, I think the key is talking with people and helping sometimes figure out what it is you really care about and what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. Yeah,
Yeah,
you learn from other people.
you do. And I want to talk a little bit about how I ended up in consulting in parallel to, the focus on being involved with our grandkids. I also felt that no, I didn't want to have another full-time job. I didn't want to be responsible for delivering products and services or networks or whatever, but I felt like I had a lot to offer. And so I kind of eased into consulting part-time. I eventually connected up with a group of other former high-level folks from wireless companies, and we formed a consulting group. And we help companies who want to develop business relationships with the big carriers. It fits very well with the other priorities I have. It keeps me sharp technically because I keep up with things. And it's just been a real fun, interesting thing. And I'm still doing some of it, even though COVID hit our business pretty hard because a lot of companies kind of shut down and whatnot. And secondly, my contacts, say at AT&T, a lot of them have aged out now, but it's still something I can do part time and I enjoy it. And so that's kind of how I ended up there. And like I said earlier, had I put more thought into it with that pause button before I walked out of AT&T for the last time, I might have gotten to this point a little quicker. So that's the advice.
I think that's good advice. It seems like you've got a whole portfolio of activities and live a very rich and rewarding life. So thank you very much for sharing the information. Enjoy the grandchildren. I can attest that is a wonderful pleasure of this time of life. So thank you again, Bill, and we'll look forward to talking again.
Thank you, Dan.